So I'm going to start off with a little story here. This is a Black & Decker canister. Apparently they were sold in Canada. So many years ago, I can't remember how old I was. I want to say just before turning a teenager, so 11, 12, something like that. My cousin had told me that there was a vacuum sitting outside a dumpster at this apartment, and of course, you know, being young and not really having money to spend on vacuums, it's like, well, I'm gonna have to go take a look at this. And I found one of these, and of course, you know, it was a canister, and those were so rare to me at the time. I think just about everyone I knew had uprights, so here was an opportunity for me to get my hands on something that was just completely different. And of course I brought it home. And I was totally unfamiliar with this style of bag system. I just really trimmed this Oric bag down to fit into there, but it's just a slot, and then it has like a seal there. It's almost like a Kenmore bag in a way. And I've actually heard that Panasonic C3 might fit these, so I have one of those on the way. I don't know if those are the same as Kenmore CQ, but I guess, you know, maybe we'll find out. But anyways, you know, not knowing where to find a bag for one of these Black & Decker ones, my solution, you know, as like a 10-year-old, was to fold a rag over multiple times and use it to kind of seal this off, thus, you know, not allowing dirt to get past that. So I was using it kind of like a bagless machine, which was really dumb, but I mean, it worked. I just didn't like cleaning it out. I generally use another vacuum for that. But yeah, I had that for a number of years, and I can't remember what I did with it, but obviously I got rid of it at some point. And the only attachment I had for that, besides the power nozzle, was this brush. So I mean, I used that for like everything. But this one actually includes the upholstery nozzle too. Kind of reminiscent of like some of those Kenmores. I mean, or Panasonics really, in the way this is designed, except for these nubs. Because I mean, a lot of those older Panasonics had something like that. But it took me a long time to find one of these for a decent price. I've occasionally seen them on eBay for like $300 or more, and this one popped up on Marketplace, and the seller agreed to ship it to me. They're like, well, it'll probably cost more than the vacuum itself. I'm like, oh, I'm totally aware of that. So fortunately, thanks to him, I managed to get my hands on this. It's been so long since I've used one, and it's different, you know, because I mean, we have this brush roll. I don't think I've ever seen another one quite like it with these separated. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a little bit reminiscent of the Eureka Vibra Groomer 2, only, you know, it has plastic beater bars instead of metal ones. And I don't know that these ever had a height adjustment on them, but I mean, it almost seems like there would be room for one right here. And the wands on here are 35 millimeter, but they're backwards. So we have the male end on this end and the female end on the other. I never really knew what size tool this thing had on it, you know, but I had nothing else to really compare it to besides the typical 1.25. And despite having like a speed control on here, it doesn't have a control for the power nozzle. I considered adding one to it, but it's like, do I want to keep this original or do I want to make it more functional? Still undecided. But, you know, growing up, it's like being unfamiliar with a lot of clean air style machines. I thought this thing was just amazing, you know, and it had such powerful suction to it. And I remember accidentally sucking up like a whole sock with this. And of course, you know, having that larger connection here as well as a wider hose, I mean, that's really no big deal for it to be able to do that. And For a long time, I assumed these were a Sanyo-made machine, because that's what somebody on Vacuum Land had said on a thread about one of these. So that was my assumption, is that these were a Sanyo. But in recent discussion with another collector named Bill, and not the usual Bill we're talking about, another Bill. I won't mention a last name because I don't know how private he is, so let's just call him Bill. But these are likely made by Samsung. And he had mentioned like the quiet storm canisters, and just looking at them, they used a very, very similar connection to these, as well as the power head. So I believe we have a match in it being a Samsung. He also mentioned them being made in Korea. So yeah, that was very interesting to learn. You know, I've assumed for years cats were fighting. And I just want to mention this. I'll try to put a link in the video too if I can figure out how to do that. I'm actually not too familiar with YouTube's, like, I think they call them annotations. I'm not familiar with how to work those. But there was another collector that goes by Konstellation Karl on here, and he does a lot of, he calls them vacuum expositions, and he goes into a lot more details about these sorts of machines, and he actually has just the main unit for one of these. Doesn't have the hose or the power nozzle, but it's pretty interesting if you're, you know, a vacuum collector. So yeah, definitely give that a check out. And before we start on the testing here, I just wanted to mention that I did do a pre-test of this, but I did it without any bag in there. And what I got was about 97 CFM from the hose end and about 82 inches of water lift. Now, I have noticed my water lift has been down a little bit, and I thought that was because, you know, this the seal around here came loose. But I put, you know, new bearings in the motor in here because it did sound a little bit rough. And I did find out what this motor was. So all we have to do is add the prefix 11 in front of that, and we'll have a full modern motor number on here. I think I've rambled on long enough, so let's get down to business. Alright, so seeing as this doesn't have a power nozzle control, we'll have to shut it off and take the measurements with it on. So we'll start with the power nozzle unplugged. We're just going to measure the full power, which is floors. Alright, and now with the nozzle. And we'll take airflow from the body. I know we're not going to get a good suction reading here because, you know, it has it does have a gap up here, and of course a little cutout for the locking mechanism. So we'll get what we get. Lots of leakage. Alright, we got our hose attached. Let's take another measurement here. After we clear that, of course. Yeah, like I said, suction's actually gone down a little bit since refurbishing it. I don't know what that's about. But this hose does like to retract. And we can hear a little bit leaking from the suction control there. Alright, and now we're down to the end of the wand. And I do have this covered with tape for that. Alright, nozzles off. Alright, I know this thing is going to nosedive, so let's get some weight on the top of it. Well, you know, I'm actually a little bit disappointed in the nozzle. I thought its agitation would be a little bit more powerful. Although I did put a filter queen belt on this thing, and maybe that's not the best choice for it. But, you know, it's like obviously the parts for these haven't been around for a while, so you just make do with what you got. I mean, still, it didn't do terribly, and it has a surprising amount of power to it for something from the late 80s. I would say it's kind of in line with a lot of high-end machines, having, you know, near 80 suction, having airflow that's probably close to 100. It was 97 at my last measurement, and I think this was slightly higher this time around. So definitely not bad for its age. And I also had my pigtail pull loose. I know these originally did have like some clips that would have gone around the wand here to help hold this in place, but obviously I don't have those. But yeah, it was cool to be able to explore this machine a little bit better, something I experienced so very long ago. So, hope you guys have enjoyed watching this.